Hey, welcome back to Daily Hope. We're following the footsteps of Jesus through the days leading up to his crucifixion on the cross and then his resurrection. Yesterday we looked at a passage that we know was the Monday leading up. That day continues, and I want to share with you on this Tuesday leading up to Easter a little more of what Jesus said. In fact, in verse 3, we're told this: later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, quote, "Tell us, when will all this happen? What will signal your return and the end of the world?" So here's what's interesting. In Matthew 24, verse 3, it's 3 or 4 days before the crucifixion, and the disciples are aware Jesus is going to die for the sins of the world. He's going to rise from the dead, and then he will return. They have their correct theology. Now, if you know much about the events of Easter, once the whole city turns on Jesus and they're watching him get beaten and he's bleeding, they kind of lose track of all that and they start to doubt. And it is this reminder for us that we can know the promises of God, and in the storm of emotion, and especially when we see evil at work in the world, or we're experiencing pain in our body or in the people we love, we can kind of forget the promises of God. Now, what's interesting is Jesus here in Matthew 24 and 25 actually gives two of the most important chapters in the Bible about the end times, the times that we may or may not live through leading up to Christ's return from heaven. I'll read you just a little bit of that, but I wanted you to have the context that the disciples actually asked, after you die and rise again, what'll be the sign that you're going to return? And he responds in verse 4, he says, "Don't let anyone mislead you." So in this time, and this is the time that we live in, where Jesus has died and risen and gone to heaven, but he hasn't yet returned, in this time, don't let anyone mislead you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah. They will deceive many, and you will hear of wars and of threats of wars or rumors of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. Now, every one of those you could check off are happening right now. Verse 8, but all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Now, you can keep reading Matthew 24 as Jesus describes more to come, and it sort of culminates in verse 30. Then at last, the sign of the Son of Man, that's Jesus, is coming. The sign that the Son of Man is coming will appear in the heavens. So when Jesus returns, no one's going to miss it. Like, everyone will see it in the sky all around the world. There will be deep mourning among all the peoples of earth. All the people who've heard about Jesus and rejected him, they'll see such a clear sign that they'll realize, I made the wrong choice. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and with great glory, and he will send out his angels with the mighty blast of a trumpet, and they will gather his chosen ones. Who's that? Everyone who's believed in him, anyone who's under a covenant promise that God is bound to in Scripture, from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. And then it continues. Now, here's what I want you to see today. Everyone living in Jerusalem on this Tuesday, 2,000 some years ago, knew the prophecies that Messiah was coming, and yet some of the people who most knew those prophecies missed it. In the same way, we know the prophecies that Jesus will return again, and I can guarantee you, on the day he returns, if we're alive and we see that symbol in the sky and the angels, and we're going to just, in the moment, we'll be elated. But what I don't want is for us to think, oh, I should have told my neighbor. I should have done more to invite that classmate, that relative of mine who didn't want anything to do with God. I should have taken a little more risk to just say, hey, just check out an Easter service online, or let me send you this link to click on. I should have done more. In fact, tomorrow we'll get into Matthew 25, where Jesus tells story after story that illustrates this principle that when he returns, we want to be found working as diligently as we can to tell people about him. So let's make that our motive today. Let's invite people to Easter services as a way of celebrating what Easter's really all about. I'll see you tomorrow.